Welcome to HushyRest, a quiet place for slow stories told gently and without hurry. Tonight's story is inspired by real events, but shared as a quiet mystery meant to be listened as you rest. One on a remote island far from the mainland, a lighthouse once followed strict rules designed so that it would never stand alone. And yet, one winter morning, the light was found dark, the station was empty, and the disappearance that followed could not be explained. This is not a story of fear, but of a mystery that was never resolved, and of a place where the rules failed without leaving an answer behind. The mystery does not begin with the disappearance itself. It begins with the system that was designed to prevent it. The lighthouse stood on a remote island where isolation was not an accident but a requirement. It was built to endure long winters, heavy seas, and months without interruption. Everything about its operation followed order. Nothing was left to change. The men assigned to the lighthouse were not chosen casually. They were selected for their discipline, their patience, and their ability to follow routine without deviation. Life at the station depended on repetition. Repetition created safety. Each day unfolded in nearly the same way. The light was inspected at set hours. The mechanisms were checked and recorded. Weather observations were written down carefully, even when nothing changed, especially when nothing changed. This consistency was intentional. The routine existed to make absence noticeable. If something went wrong, it would stand out of again the pattern. There was one rule above all others. The lighthouse was never to be left unattended. Not for a storm, not for an emergency, not for any reason that could be imagined. If exterior work was required, one man remained inside. If two men were needed outdoors, the third stayed with the light. This balance had been maintained for years without exception. The rule was simple, and at it worked. The island offered no reason to abandon the station. There were no neighboring settlements, no passing ships close enough to call for help, no shelter beyond the buildings already provided. Leaving the lighthouse together would not have increased safety. It would have done the opposite. Supplies arrived on a predictable schedule. Relief rotations were planned weeks in advance. Nothing happened suddenly on the island. That was the nature of the place, slow, predictable, controlled. Inside the lighthouse, life moved at an even pace. Meals were taken at regular hours. Work was divided and understood. Disagreements, if they occurred, were small and private. There was no record of conflict among the keepers, no complaints filed, no unusual notes written in the margin of the logbook. The logbook itself followed a strict format: time, weather, sea conditions, maintenance notes. It was not a place for thoughts or feeling, only facts. The routine created a kind of quiet certainty. As long as the entry continued, the system was functioning. As long as the light remained attended, the world beyond the island was protected. This is why the disappearance is so difficult to reconcile. When the lighthouse was later found empty, it represented more than missing men. It represented a complete failure of a system built to prevent exactly that outcome. The rule that had never been broken was broken without explanation. No message had been sent, no signal raised, no request for assistance recorded. There was no indication that the routine had begun to fail gradually. No warning sign, no escalation. The station did not appear abandoned in haste, nor did it appear carefully prepared for departure. It was simply left. This absence raises a question that cannot be ignored. At what moment did the rule stop applying? The men would have known the consequence of breaking protocol. Leaving the lighthouse unattended was considered unthinkable. It was not just a mistake. It was a violation of trust. Yet the routine ended anyway. The structure of lighthouse life allowed very few possibilities. Either the men believed they were acting within the rules, or something occurred that made the rules feel irrelevant. There is no written explanation for either scenario. What makes this more unsettling is how ordinary everything had been before. The routine had not changed. The duty remained the same. The system showed no strain. Nothing in the recorded pattern suggests fear or urgency. The island itself offered no clear threat at the moment. No warning was written, no alarm raised. The rule existed to ensure that even in moments of confusion, at least one man would remain. That safeguard failed completely. All three left the lighthouse. This fact stands alone, unsupported by explanation, and resistant to interpretation. Any story that follows must begin here, with a rule designed to be absolute, with a routine designed to reveal disruption, and with the quiet certainty that, somehow, both were abandoned at once. The mystery does not ask where the men went, not yet. It asks something more difficult. What could have happened that made experienced keepers, trained to rely on order, decide that the rule no longer applied? The lighthouse was not built for improvisation. It was built for endurance. And yet, on that winter morning, endurance gave way to absence, and the system that should have prevented it left no trace of why. The written record is calm. That is the first thing that stands out. Not vague, not uncertain, calm. The logbook entries describe ordinary days, written in the same steady hand that had filled its pages for weeks. There is no urgency in the words, no hesitation, no warning. The language remains consistent. Short sentences, clear observations, nothing out of place. Weather conditions are noted carefully. Winds described as moderate. Seas recorded as manageable. Visibility listed as good. The tone does not change. There is no entry suggesting danger. No mention of rising concern. No indication that the island was becoming unsafe. The routine continues on paper, even as it would soon disappear in reality. The entries follow their usual rhythm: time, conditions, maintenance, nothing more. This matters because the logbook was not optional. It was the official voice of the station. If something unusual occurred, it was meant to appear there first. But the calm persists. The words do not anticipate what was later found outside. When the relief crew arrived and began to inspect the island, they did not see calm. They saw damage. Heavy iron railings were bent, not loosened, not worn down by time, bent. Stone surfaces showed signs of impact. Large fragments displaced from where they should have been. Marks left behind suggested force rather than erosion. This was not a slow work of weather over months. It was sudden, violent, and it did not match with the written record. The island itself bore the mark of something powerful. Equipment normally secured was damaged. Structures built to withstand storms showed strain, yet the logbook described no storm. This contradiction is the center of the mystery. If the records were correct, then the damage should not exist. If the damage was real, then the records should have warned of it. Both cannot be true at the same time, and yet both are present. The calm words and the violent evidence coexist without explanation. The written observations do not show panic. They do not show confusion. They show normality. This suggests that, at the time they were written, the keepers believed conditions were under control. There is no sign that they expected danger. The repetition of routine continues until the final entries. Even there, the tone remains steady. No sentence breaks the pattern. No phrase suggests alarm. The calmness of the writing is almost more unsettling than the silence would have been. Because silence could mean interruption, calm suggests confidence. The question becomes unavoidable. When did the damage occur? If the storm came after the last entry, then the keeper had no warning. but if the storm came before, then the records are incomplete. Neither option resolves the contradiction. The island does not support a mild explanation. The physical evidence suggests significant force, yet the written records suggest none. This gap between observation and reality cannot be bridged easily. The lighthouse was equipped to withstand severe conditions. Its builders anticipated harsh weather. Its exterior was reinforced. Damage of this kind was rare. When it occurred, it was usually noted. But here, it is absent from the written account. The logbook does not lie, but it also does not explain. The calmness of the language continues to echo against the evidence outside. Waves strong enough to bend iron would not arrive quietly. They would announce themselves. Wind capable of moving stone would not go unnoticed, and yet nothing is written. This suggests that either the storm was sudden beyond expectation, or that the men were not present when the damage occurred. That possibility introduces another contradiction. If the men were absent during the storm, then they must have left before it arrived. But the routine does not account for their departure. The written calm suggests presence, the damage suggests absence. Both point in opposite directions. The lighthouse was meant to be a point of observation. Its purpose was to record conditions accurately. To trust the logbook was trust to the system. And yet, the system presents two conflicting truths. Calm on the page, violence on the island. The repetition of routine makes this harder to dismiss. The writing does not show distraction. It does not trail off. It ends clearly. The last calm observation sits beside the evidence of disruption, as if they belong to the different realities. This contradiction cannot be softened. It is not a matter of interpretation. It is a matter of mismatch. The island tells one story, the logbook tells another. The calm tone of the entries does not prepare the reader for the condition of the site, and the condition of the site does not support the calmness of the entries. This tension remains unresolved. The evidence does not indicate when damage occurred. It does not explain why it was not recorded. It simply exists. The calm reported does not protect the station from what followed. And the damage found does not explain the absence of alarm. The lighthouse stands between these two truths, offering no clarity. The writing record ends as it began, measured, controlled, quiet. Outside, the island tells a louder story, but one without words. The mystery deepens here, not because something dramatic happened, but because the available explanations cancel each other out. The calm denies the storm denies the calm, and the absence of the keepers prevents either from being corrected. The island remains marked, the logbook remains composed. Neither explains the other, and the absence between them grows larger the longer one looks. The interior of the lighthouse does not suggest panic, it suggests interruption. This distinction is important. When a place is abandoned in fear, it carries signs of urgency. Objects are displaced, personal items are gathered, movement becomes visible. Here, movement is subtle. The rooms inside the station remain mostly in order. Furniture is upright, shelves are intact, nothing appears overturned in haste. The living space feels paused rather than emptied. Personal belongings remain where they were last used. Clothing hangs where it was placed. Boots are lying near the door, dry and unused. No effort appears that had been made to prepare for departure. This absence of preparation contradicts any idea of escape. If the men had intended to leave the island, even briefly, they would have dressed for it. The weather outside required protection. No one would step into cold wind without heavy clothing. Yet the coats remained indoors. This detail is small but persistent. It suggests that whatever drew the men away from the interior was not expected to last. The kitchen's area shows signs of ordinary use. Meals had been prepared recently. There is no evidence of a final gathering or hurried consumption. Food supplies are untouched. Nothing has been packed. The table is not cleared with intention, nor is it left in disarray. It appears not used. This is the difference between living and being interrupted. An abandoned place feels concluded. This play feels unfinished. The beds are unmade, but not disturbed. A sleep had likely occurred. Nothing suggests a sudden awakening. There are no personal notes, no letters, no messages left behind. If the men had anticipated absence, they would have left something, even a brief explanation. But there is nothing. The lighthouse interior does not read as a farewell. Tools are returned to their usual positions. Nothing essential is missing. The men did not gather supplies. They did not collect navigation equipment. They did not prepare for travel. This reinforces the sense that their departure was not planned. The spaces between rooms hold no evidence of haste. No scuffed floors, no open storage. The doorway remained clear. The absence of disorder is almost deliberate in its calmness. This calm interior stands in contrast to the idea of sudden danger. If the men had fled from fear, the space would reflect it. But it does not. The station feels as though the man expected to return. This expectation is what deepens the mystery. The interior shows continuity, not conclusion. One particular detail draws attention: the table. It is not fully set, nor fully cleared. This suggests a moment interrupted rather than complete. Interruption implies something external, something that drew attention away. The lighthouse was not left because it was unsafe inside. It was left because something outside demanded attention. This distinction matters. An abandoned place closes itself. An interrupted place remains open. The lighthouse remains open. Doors are not secured with finality. Windows are intact. The structure has not been sealed. Nothing indicates an interruption to be gone. The interior offers no timeline for departure. There is no sequence of preparation. Time simply stops. This creates a quiet tension. If the men had believed they were in danger, they would have prepared. If they believed they were leaving permanently, they would have organized. They did neither. This suggests that they believed the situation was temporary. Perhaps they expected to step outside briefly. Perhaps they believed they would return shortly. The interior supports this assumption. The absence of preparation is consistent across all rooms. Nothing contradicts it. The men did not take items that would be essential outdoors. They did not bring equipment needed for extended exposure. This rose out of many explanations. The interior of the lighthouse tells a restrained story. It does not dramatize the moment. It does not explain it. It simply presents evidence of interruption. This interruption feels collective. There is no sign that one man left first and the other followed. Nothing suggests a gradual departure. All signs point to a single moment, a shared decision, a shared interruption. The interior does not indicate disagreement or confusion. There are no signs of argument. No spaces feel neglected. Everything appears evenly posed. This suggests coordination, not chaos. The men did not scatter. They moved together. This is consistent with the earlier contradiction. All three men left. The interior confirms it, but it does not explain why. The calmness of the space creates its own unease. It does not demand attention. It invites quiet observation. The longer one looks, the more absence becomes noticeable. Absence not as an emptiness, but a suspension. The lighthouse interior does not provide answers. It removes possibilities. It narrows the range of explanation. It tells us what did not happen. There was no escape. There was no panic. There was no preparation. What remains is interruption. Something external broke the routine without destroying it. The man left with the expectation of return. The interior waits for them, and that waiting becomes part of the mystery. The lighthouse does not mourn their absence, it preserves it. Every object remains where it was last placed. Every space holds the memory of continuity. This continuity is what makes the disappearance so difficult to resolve. The interior does not allow for dramatic explanations. It's allowed only for quiet ones. And quiet mysteries are often the hardest to explain. The lighthouse was not abandoned. It was left, and the difference matters. The written record does not end in chaos. It ends quietly. This is what makes it difficult to interpret. The final entries do not announce themselves as final. They do not signal importance. They do not prepare to the reader for absence. They continue as if nothing unusual were about to happen. The tone remains steady, measured, controlled. There is no shift into urgency, no sudden change in language, no break in structure. The writing does not rush, it does not slow, it simply stops. This absence of the transition is the contradiction. Most records end because something interrupts them. An emergency, a decision, a conclusion. Here, no one of those appear. The last entry followed the same pattern as the one before them. Weather noted, conditions observed, routine acknowledged. The words do not lean toward uncertainty. They do not suggest fear. They remain factual. This consistency is unsettling in its calmness. If the situation had changed suddenly, one would expect a trace, a sentence unfinished, a phrase altered. But the sentences end properly. Each line completed itself. The record does not trail off. It concludes each thought cleanly. And then there is nothing. This creates a silence that feels deliberate, even if it was not. The record offers no explanation for its own ending. There is no statement marking the last entry, no closing remark, no indication of interruption. The final note sits beside Ellie on was as if were just another part of the routine. This sameness blurs the moment where everything changed. The absence of contrast makes it impossible to locate the shift. One moment, the routine exists. The next, it does not. There is no bridge between these states. This lack of transition denies the reader a clear moment of departure. The record does not explain why it stopped mid-writing. It does not explain why the man stopped recording. It does not acknowledge its own silence. the tone remains neutral to the end. This neutrality deepens the mystery rather than resolving it, because neutrality suggests control. It suggests that, at the moment of writing, nothing felt wrong. The record implies that the man believed the system was intact. That belief did not survive, but the record does not show when it failed. The writing does not warn of an approaching end. There is no gradual darkening of tone, no creeping uncertainty. Everything remains stable until it does not. This stability creates a sense of suspension. The record exists in a continuous present, uninterrupted by event. When it ends without explanation. The absence of explanation becomes its own message. But it is a message without words. The repetition of routine in the final entry reinforces this effect. The same categories appear, the same observations. Nothing new is introduced. This repetition invites rest. The mind begins to follow pattern rather than search for meaning. This is where the mystery becomes quiet. The record stops explaining not because it chooses to, but because it no longer exists. The silence that follows feels heavier because it is not announced. There is no sense of closure, only absence. The final writing moments do not prepare for departure. They do not signal intention. They do not reveal awareness. The record does not know it is ending. This ignorance is significant. If the man had known something was about to happen, the writing would reflect it, but it does not. This suggests that whatever occurred was not anticipated or not recognized as significant. The record remains calm because calm was all of the man felt at the time of writing. The end arrives without warning. This lack of warning resists explanation. It does not fit with theories of panic or fear. It aligns more closely with interruption. Something external stops the routine, but the record does not show resistance. It simply ceases. The last entry does not conclude the story. It leaves it suspended. The absence of transition denies the listener a clear boundary. There is no final moment to hold on to. The routine dissolves quietly. This quiet dissolution invites rest. The repetition of the record, the steadiness of its tone, encourage the mind to release effort. There is nothing dramatic to resolve, only a gentle disappearance of explanation. The record does not escalate, it does not collapse, it fades. This fading is what places the listener deeper into rest. The mind stops searching for answers because the record offers none. The mystery remains, but it does not demand attention. It exists without urgency. The final entries do not claim significance. They exist, and they do not. The silence that follows is interrupted. No new information enters. No conclusion is offered. The record ends, and the lighthouse remains. The absence of explanation becomes part of the structure. It is not a flaw. It is the final state of the record. The mystery is not solved. It is simply left. The writing does not explain the silence. It becomes part of it. And in that quiet, the record rests. Over time, explanations were offered. They were not dramatic. They were not complex. They were simple. Simple explanations are comforting. They give shape uncertainty. They allowed the mind to rest. But in this case, none of them remain intact. Each explanation explains something, and each one left something untouched. The first theory spoke of weather. Storms are familiar. They explain damage. They explain disruption. A sudden storm could have struck the island without warning. Strong winds, rough seas. This would explain the physical force observed outside, but the records do not support it. The weather logs describe calm conditions. No rising pressure, no sudden shift. The sea was steady. The wind was measured. A storm strong enough to cause damage would have left a trace. It did not. The water explains the damage, but not the records. Another theory suggested human error. Fatigue, misjudgment. Perhaps a routine task was attended in unsafe conditions. Perhaps someone slipped. Perhaps one mistake led to another. This explained movement. It explained interruption. But it does not explain absence. There was no sign of preparation to leave. No signs of emergency response. Human error creates urgency. Urgency leaves patterns. Those patterns were not found. Another explanation pointed to conflict, disagreement, tension. The men were isolated. Weeks passed without contact. Conflict is possible in such conditions, but conflict leaves evidence. Raised voice, broken order. Inside the station, order remained. Personal items stayed where they belong. The routine did not collapse. Conflict explains departure, but not continuity. Then came the idea of rescue. That help arrived unexpectedly. That the men left quickly, believing they would return. This explains why things were left behind, but rescue leaves records. Ships log arrivals. Signals are exchanged. No such record exists, and rescue does not require silence. It announced itself. Another explanation suggested accident at sea, that one man felt, The others followed. This explains absence, but it does not explain structure. No ropes disturbed, no equipment missing. Accidents leave asymmetry. This place remained balanced. Each explanation resolves one tension and creates another. They do not align. They do not overlap cleanly. They do not complete the shape. The incompleteness is important. It means the mystery is not hidden behind complexity. It is hidden behind calmness. Nothing appears dramatic enough to demand resolution. Nothing appears chaotic enough to justify disappearance. This is why the explanations do not hold. They assume a moment of decision, a point where everything changes, but the evidence suggests continuity, not rupture. The routine does not break, it simply ends. Some explanations tried to combine theories, weather and error, conflict and accident, but combining explanations does not strengthen them. It weakens them, because each added layer increases inconsistency. The more that is added, the less stable the story becomes. The simplest explanations fail not because they are simple. They fail because the situation resists narrative. It does not behave like a story. It behaves like an absence. The mystery remains quiet because it was quiet from the beginning. There is no dramatic peak to uncover, only a steady state that disappears. This absence does not provoke fear. It provokes stillness. The mind searches for cause and finds none that remain whole. This search slows. Eventually it stops, not because it is satisfied, but because there is nothing left to examine. The place does not answer questions, it holds them. And holding questions does not require resolution. The lack of conclusion becomes part of the experience. The mystery does not close, it rests. And in that resting place, the mind is allowed to rest as well. There is no final explanation offered here. No theory is chosen. No answer is elevated above the others, because choosing would impose a structure where none exists. The story ends where the evidence ends, without clarity, without alarm, only with quiet uncertainty, the kind that does not disturb, the kind that settles. The lighthouse remains, the record remains, the explanation pass through and leave. Nothing is solved, nothing needs to be. And in that unresolved space, the story gently lets go. The island remains. The lighthouse still stands, watching the water, doing what it was built to do. No answers arrived, and none were taken away. The records stayed where they were written. The room stayed as they were left. The silence stays complete. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be held quietly, without effort. There is nothing more you need to remember, nothing you need to understand. The story can stay here as you can rest. Thank you for listening. This is HushyRest. You can let go now.